12 people have been executed by the state of Illinois. Charles Walker, September 12, 1990. In 1990, the state of Illinois executed Charles Thomas Walker, a convicted murderer, for the June 1983 killings of Mascouta residents Kevin Paul, 21 years old, and his fiancée Sharon Winker, 25 years old. Due to the lethal injection machine's inability to force the chemicals through the kinked lines, the execution was considered botched. Walker was born in Fayetteville, Illinois on April 28, 1940. His parents, Lucille and Jess Walker, separated when Charles was still a small child. His stepfather and father were both alcoholics. When Walker was 8 years old, his father handed him some moonshine to taste, and he became intoxicated. By the time he was 12, his stepfather was taking him to neighborhood bars to get drunk. Walker began committing crimes at the age of 14, perpetrating burglary and other small-time infractions. He was caught purchasing beer for his younger cousin a year later, and he was charged with contributing to the delinquency of a child. Walker left home, left school after his sophomore year, and moved to Florida. 6 months later, he went back to Illinois and carried on with his criminal life, breaking into other homes. Walker spent 6.5 years in Menard Correctional Center after being found guilty of burglary at the age of 17. Walker stole cash and alcohol from a tavern less than a year after being freed. For 4 more years, he was returned to Menard. Walker's father was shot dead in O'Fallon in 1961. Before being released, the guy found guilty of the murder was imprisoned for just 2 years. Walker embarked on a drinking binge in 1969, 2 months after being released from prison. He was shot in the face during a gunfight with Whiteside County Police while intoxicated, and he lost his right eye as a result. Walker received a 6-year prison sentence after being charged with attempted murder. He was given a 4-year prison sentence after committing an armed robbery at a gas station after being released. Walker married Stella when he was released from prison, although they were often at odds. Because of his constant drinking, she would eventually file for a divorce. Walker woke up on June 18, 1983, had some vodka and beer, and then went fishing at Silver Creek for the day. Walker met Kevin Paul, age 21, and his fiancée Sharon Winker, age 25, by the creek. Walker decided to rob them after talking to them for some time by pulling a .25 caliber handgun. He took Paul's wallet, secured their hands with tape, and tied them on a tree. Paul then informed Walker that he knew who he was and that he would not get away with the crime. Walker chose to murder them both out of fear that they would report him to the police. He shot Paul in the right temple, killing him, and then he shot Winker in the back of the skull, killing her. Walker drank beer at the Runway Lounge bar near Scott Air Force Base after the killings. He spent several hours talking to the owner till after midnight. Then, when everyone had gone, Walker got up, pulled out his gun, and robbed the bar. The owner chased after Walker as he ran off with the stolen money, got into a car, and crashed Walker's car. Walker fired, striking the windshield of the other car but avoiding the owner. Walker escaped as smoke filled the area after the incident. Upon arrival, authorities examined the car and discovered several items that were verified to be Paul and Winker's. Furthermore, the murder weapon was also found. Walker escaped to his half-sister's home and requested a ride to a bus stop in St. Louis. After that, he purchased a bus ticket to his ex-wife's home in Tacoma, Washington. Later, he called an old lover while hitchhiking to Walden, Colorado. The ex-girlfriend called the Jackson County Sheriff's Department and turned him in. Walker was taken into custody, refused extradition, and was picked up by St. Clair County Police on July 16. Walker entered a guilty plea to 2 charges of murder on July 27, 1983. Instead of having a judge decide his case, he opted for a jury trial. In a little more than an hour, the jury, 6 men and 6 women, returned a guilty verdict. Walker received a death sentence on October 13, 1983. He chose not to challenge his sentence any further in 1987. Walker was declared mentally competent by the Illinois Supreme Court in 1988, allowing him to forego additional legal appeals. He was put to death by lethal injection at Stateville Correctional Center on September 12, 1990. In more than 28 years, he was the first person executed in Illinois. Blackberry pie, biscuits, and fried wild rabbit were his last meal. A kink in the plastic tube caused the flow of chemicals into Walker's body to cease, delaying his execution. Walker spoke with convicted serial killer John Wayne Gacy while he was on death row. He revealed in an interview that he and Gacy would never discuss Walker's wish to be put to death, only generic topics like ball scores. 4 years after Walker's execution, Gacy faced execution as well. John Wayne Gacy, May 10, 1994. At least 33 young men and boys were assayed, tortured, and killed by serial killer and sex offender Gacy in the Chicago, Illinois area. His reputation as the killer clown stemmed from his public clowning before his murders were discovered. All of Gacy's known killings took place in his ranch-style home. On the pretense of performing a magic act, he would usually entice a victim to his house and trick them into wearing handcuffs. After torturing and assaying his captive, he would either strangle or asphyxiate his victim to death. 3 victims were buried somewhere on his property, 4 were dumped in the Des Plaines River, and 26 victims were interred in the crawl area of his house. In 1968, Gacy was found guilty of the sodomy of a juvenile boy in Waterloo, Iowa, and was given a 10-year prison term, but he only spent 18 months locked up. In 1972, he killed his first victim. By the end of 1975, he had killed 2 more times, and following his divorce from his second wife in 1976, he killed at least 30 more. Gacy was arrested on December 21, 1978, as a result of the investigation into the disappearance of Robert Peast, a teenager from Des Plaines. Gacy received a death sentence on March 13, 1980. He was sent to Stateville Correctional Center to be put to death early on May 9, 1994. He and his family were permitted to have a private picnic on the jail grounds that afternoon. Gacy ordered a bucket of KFC, fresh strawberries, a dozen fried shrimp, French fries, and a Diet Coke for his final meal. Before being led to the Stateville execution chamber that night, a Catholic priest performed the last rites for him. An estimated 1,000 people gathered outside the correctional facility in the hours before Gacy's execution. While there were a few demonstrators opposed to the death sentence, the majority of people there were fiercely in favor of the execution. The process of giving the fatal injection started around 12:40 a.m. However, the chemicals used in the execution unexpectedly hardened and clogged the IV tubing. The execution resumed after the team swapped out the clogged tube. It took 18 minutes to complete. The issue was attributed by anesthesiologists to the inexperience of the jail officials in carrying out an execution. Illinois reportedly adopted a different lethal injection technique as a result of this incident. Having been labeled as a psychopath, Gacy showed no remorse for his acts. His last words to his attorney prior to his execution were that the state was killing him and that his death would not make up for the deaths of others. The phrase, "kiss my ass," was reportedly his last words. However, prosecutor William Kunkel said in 2020 that it was said to a jail official and wasn't included in any formal statement made before Gacy was put to death. Gacy's brain was extracted on May 10, 1994 at 12:58 a.m. following confirmation of his death. It is owned by Helen Morrison, a defense witness at Gacy's trial, who has conducted interviews with Gacy and other serial killers in an effort to identify the common traits of violent sociopaths. He was cremated, and it is unknown where his ashes are now. Only 28 of Gacy's victims have been positively identified. The youngest were Samuel Stapleton and Michael Marino, both 14. The eldest were Francis Alexander and Russell Nelson, both 21. James Free Jr., March 22, 1995. James Free was found guilty of killing 34-year-old Bonnie Serpico in 1978. While on vacation from the Army, he sneaked into the office of a Chicago suburb data processing company and attempted to assay Mrs. Serpico and a coworker while wearing a towel over his face and armed with a knife and revolver. Free shot Serpico to death after she tried to run. Additionally, he shot the coworker, who lived. He was apprehended and sentenced to death. His last words were, "Taking my life will not bring back the victims. Capital punishment is not the answer." He also asked for forgiveness. He received a final meal of shrimp, French fries, strawberry cheesecake, and soda. In a rare occurrence, Free was just one of two people executed the same day by the same state. In less than an hour, another inmate was put to death. Hernando Williams, March 22, 1995. A young black man named Williams abducted a white woman named Linda Goldstone from the Northwestern Medical Center parking lot in Chicago, Illinois on March 29, 1978. Goldstone, a mother of a small boy and the wife of a doctor, was headed to teach a Lamaze class when Williams came up to her with a revolver. Williams forced her to partially undress and climb into the front seat of his car after she landed him her money. Goldstone was held captive by Williams for over 2 days. Williams was on bail for the kidnapping and essay of another lady when he abducted Goldstone. He spent several days driving around with her in the back of his car, even bringing her to a court hearing in Maywood, Illinois. Williams exited the courtroom a comparatively free man after the assistant state's attorney informed the judge during the hearing that he was not prepared for trial. Upon his return to the court parking lot, he noticed a group of people who seemed to be conversing with his car's trunk. With Goldstone still in the trunk, he departed the area after telling those individuals to go away. The license plate number was supplied to the police by one of the people who had spoken to Goldstone when she was in the courthouse trunk. The tip was not followed by the police. Williams eventually acknowledged that he had essayed Goldstone over their 2 nights together in various lodge-ins. On April 1, 1978, at approximately 5 in the morning, Williams released Goldstone, giving her $1.25 for her bus fare, and instructed her to board the bus and travel home. Rather, she went up to a house, knocked on the door, and requested assistance. A firefighter from Chicago unlocked the door. She was informed by the firefighter that he would contact the police. Then he left her outside and shut the door. Williams, in the meantime, had grown anxious, questioning whether Goldstone would follow through on her pledge to board the bus. She was talking to a man inside the house when he went back around the block. Williams exited his vehicle and called Goldstone once the firefighter had shut the door. After guiding her to a back alley, he shot her twice and then left. A few hours later, Williams was discovered by Chicago police at his parents' house, cleaning out his car's trunk. Williams was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. He entered a guilty plea to aggravated kidnapping, robbery, essay, and murder at the insistence of his lawyers. Every member of the crew hoped Hernando would not be executed. The plan didn't work. Black people were routinely executed from the jury by the state prosecutors. Hernando Williams was given the death penalty by the all-white jury in January 1980. At the age of 40, he was put to death by lethal injection on March 25, 1995. He had no last words. His final meal was the same as Free's: shrimp, French fries, strawberry cheesecake, and soda. Please hit that subscribe button if you like my channel. See you next time. Bye-bye.